In today's video, I'll show you how to make the geese using the pattern from this beautiful book by Corinne Lapierre, 12 Days of Christmas Felt Decorations. And here is the final ornament, so let's dive right in and I'll show you how to make it. For supplies, we are going to need felt. I have white, this light blue, and orange. We're also going to need thread, needle, stuffing. I'll be using this 1/8 inch wide ribbon, a sharp pair of scissors, double-sided tape, and the pattern from the book. I don't want to cut up my book, so I made a copy of the pattern and I'll be using that instead. To start, I am going to roughly cut out the pieces from the pattern sheet. First, I'll cut out the body. I'm using double-sided tape to hold the pattern in place so it doesn't shift while I'm cutting. Since we need both a front and a back piece, it's important that they match perfectly, and the double-sided tape really helps with that. Carefully trace around the pattern, take your time and be as precise as possible. When you are ready to cut out the second side, you don't need to reapply the double-sided tape. It should still be sticky enough to hold the pattern in place. Here is the beak. I left it just a little bit longer when I cut it out. That really helped me when I was making the calling bird ornament, so I figured I would do the same thing again here. Now that we have both sides of the body, the wings, and the beak all cut out, we can start sewing. We are going to start by embroidering the eye using a French knot. I am using a double strand of black embroidery floss because I want the eyeball to be a bit bigger and more noticeable. Feel free to adjust the thickness depending on how bold you want the eye to look. When you embroider the second eye, make sure the pieces are mirrored. That way, when you stitch the front and the back together, the eyes will end up on the correct sides. It is easy to accidentally make two identical sides instead of mirrored ones, so just double check before you start stitching. To make a French knot, bring your needle up through the felt where you want the eye to be. Then wrap the thread around the needle 2 or 3 times. Holding the wrapped thread gently with one hand, insert the needle back down into the fabric very close to where it came up. Slowly pull the needle through and you'll have a nice little knot that looks like an eye. With both eyes done, we can move on to decorating the wing. Place the wing onto the body, lining up the curve of the wing with the curve along the back. Make sure it sits comfortably in place before you start stitching. This will help everything look nice and balanced. Following the design from the book, we are going to add daisy stitches to the wing. These will look like feathers and will also help secure the wing in place. To make a daisy stitch, bring your needle up through the felt where you want the base of the petal to be. Then insert the needle back down right next to where you came up, but don't pull the thread all the way through. Instead, bring the needle back up a short distance away from the tip of the petal and make sure you're working thread loops under the tip of the needle. Now pull gently and the loop will form a nice petal shape. To secure it, just make a tiny stitch over the tip of the loop. Continue making daisy stitches until the entire wing is covered. Next, we'll fill in each daisy stitch just like it's shown in the picture. Use a contrasting color to really make the details pop. I am using yellow but feel free to pick any color that complements your design. Now it's time to connect the front and the back pieces of the body. But before we start stitching, I am going to prepare my ribbon so it's ready to go when I need it. That way I don't have to pause in the middle of sewing to cut it. Align both sides of the body, making sure the edges match up neatly. And then begin connecting them using a blanket stitch all the way around. Now I've threaded a really long piece of thread onto my needle, which reminds me of a little story my mom used to tell me when she was teaching me how to sew. But looks like I didn't really learn from it. The story goes: once upon a time, in a cozy little village, there lived two friends, Bunny and Cat. They were both excellent tailors, and one sunny afternoon, they decided to have a friendly sewing competition. "I bet I can stitch this whole quilt faster than you," said Bunny, bouncing with excitement. "You are on," purred Cat, threading her needle calmly. Now Bunny, being Bunny, didn't like stopping once he started, so he threaded a very, very, very long piece of thread onto his needle. "That way, I won't have to stop and rethread," he said proudly. Cat, on the other hand, used a shorter little piece of thread, just enough to do a few stitches at a time. Bunny laughed. "You'll be stopping and rethreading all day." But as he began to sew, Bunny ran into trouble. Each time he pulled the thread through the fabric, it would not entangle. Sometimes it got stuck, and because it was so long, Bunny had to hop out the window, run around the tree, across the field, and all the way back just to pull the thread tight before he could make the next stitch. Meanwhile, Cat sat comfortably in her chair, stitch after neat little stitch. When her thread ran out, she just rethreaded her needle quickly and kept going. No tangles, no knots, no running laps around the yard. By the end of the day, Cat was done with her quilt and sipping tea in the sunshine. Bunny, he was still trying to untangle a knot in his thread halfway through. And from that day on, Bunny always used shorter thread and never missed tea time again. Moral of the story: a shorter thread might need rethreading more often, but it's smoother, faster, and way less exhausting than running across the yard every time you stitch. And here I am, Still remembering the story, but haven't learned from it. Now it's time to insert the beak. Just place it between the two felt pieces and make sure you are happy with how it's positioned. Once you are satisfied, continue your blanket stitch right over that area to securely hold the beak in place. And now it's time for the giveaway question. If this is the first video you've come across in this series, be sure to check out the giveaway rules in the description box below. We are halfway through the 12 days of Christmas ornaments, and I would love to know which of the ornaments we've made so far is your favorite. Or do you have a favorite at all? Let me know in the comments below for a chance to win the full set of ornaments I am making. Now it's time to add the ribbon. Fold it in half to create a loop and insert it between the two layers of the felt at the top of the ornament. Hold it in place with a few stitches to secure it before continuing with your blanket stitch. Make sure the loop is centered and pointing upward so it hangs nicely when finished. Now it's time to stuff the goose. I am using a skewer to help push the stuffing into the tight areas like the neck, but you can use a pen, a chopstick, or really anything narrow to help you push the stuffing into those tight spots. To save money and reduce waste, I'm using a mix of polyester stuffing and small scrap pieces of felt. Since the body is white, I wasn't sure if darker felt scraps would show through, so I made sure to separate them out and only use white ones. Once the goose is nice and plump, I'll finish it off by sewing the opening closed. Just continue with the blanket stitch until you reach where you started. And that's it. Our goose ornament is all finished. I hope you enjoyed making it with me. Don't forget to let me know in the comments which ornament from the series has been your favorite so far for a chance to win the full set. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next ornament in the 12 Days of Christmas series. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, happy crafting!